Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside with me today. Don't let the hoodie fool you, it is cold out here today, but I figured I'd brave the elements and come outside and talk about strings and cables. What does it mean when you get a cheap set of string cables or an expensive set, and what are the pros and cons of each side? So it really doesn't matter what type of compound bow you shoot. I'm an elite shooter, but you can shoot a Hoyt Matthews, you can shoot a Prime or a PSE, it does not matter. We really have to worry about our string and cables, every single one of us, whether it's a 3, 2, or a 5-piece set. You really have to focus on the health of your string and cables. It's just like the oil and tires on your car. You're gonna have to change them from time to time. Sure, you can run on bald tires and your oil might be a few thousand over from your last change, but if you don't take care of it, it's gonna damage your bow over time, or potentially in a really bad situation, you might have a string or cable snap and you end up half dry firing or fully dry firing your bow, and that is detrimental to the whole kit and caboodle. So what does it mean when you get a cheap pair of string cables versus an expensive pair, and is there a benefit with going over one than the other? So I have 3 sets of string cables here from 3 different manufacturers to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. These are strings by Winner's Choice on this Elite Victory. They come stock from the factory and they're going to run well over $100 for a 3-piece set. On this Elite Energy 35, I have a set of 60X custom strings, even though I put these speed knocks back on from the original Winner's Choice set that I replaced it on. These are going to run about $75 to $85 to your door. And last but not least, on my wife's Elite Spirit, I have Cedar Hill custom strings based right out of here in Pennsylvania. I've had a couple of sets from Greg in the past, and so I was very excited to put these onto my wife's bow. They run about $58 to your door for the full set. So real quick, let's talk about string cables, what you're gonna get with all manufacturers pretty much, whether they're small or large. The biggest producer of the fibers of string and cables is BCY, and they produce a plethora of different string materials from recurves to compounds and crossbows. Now most of the string materials nowadays are 452X, BCYX, X99, and Mercury. Those are your 4 top ones for compound bows. You can't be using the recurve string material. It's gonna break and it's gonna damage your bow. It's just not built to handle the stressors and strains that are associated with shooting a compound versus shooting a recurve. So when you get something like this, these are old stock strings from Winner's Choice, but on the package here it says the material is BCYX, and everybody uses BCY. I don't know of any major manufacturer that's using something other than BCY. So the meat and potatoes of everybody's string is exactly the same. They might use 452X or they might use BCYX or Mercury, but the actual fibers where they come from all come from the same company. So where you get the cheap and expensive part is in the building, in the actual manufacturer who takes those fibers and turns them into strings. So the smaller the operation, usually the cheaper it is to produce them because they don't have all the overhead costs. They don't have the brick and mortar warehouse. They don't have to pay employees. They don't have health insurance and payroll benefits and all that sort of stuff. So the smaller the company, usually the cheaper it is to get strings. Also, the larger the company that's in another company, for example, Winner's Choice is part of the Outdoor Group, an overarching company, I've found that sometimes they're a little bit more expensive. Now, that doesn't mean that string cables for like Matthews bows, which are zebra strings, are cheap. They certainly aren't. Or even America's Best Bowstrings, which is on a couple different companies, and Fuse Strings, which are on Hoyt and Vapor Trail and all these sorts of stuff. But typically the smaller mom and pop, if you will, are a little bit cheaper than the big guys. So let's take a look at my wife's bow, which has the $58 set on it. And what you really can start telling with cheaper strings, kind of that mom and pop store, if you will, versus the larger, more mass-produced strings from a larger company, is you're checking out your servings. Again, the servings are produced from BCY 99% of the time. So the servings that go around the cams and the modules, the center serving, if your bow has a string stop, the serving, it's there. And you can see if it's tight. If you can move it with your fingers, that's not good at all. It's way too loose. But in this case, I've shot Cedar Hill before. I'll put a link to his eBay store down below if you're interested in buying a set from him. But like the tightness of the servings as it goes around, you have uneven wrapping. The strands of the cables are, is it an even number both sides? Do you see any twisting that's gone wrong, or any of the strands loose and some of the strands tight. That's what you're looking for when it comes to a higher priced or a lower priced pair of string cables. Now I can attest, because I've been shooting Cedar Hill before, I put it on my Carbon Element and my PSE Bow Madness from many years ago, that I had no problems with his string and cables. I just ended up selling the bows and getting other ones. And I have no doubt that my wife's set will produce just the same. She's shooting a low poundage. She doesn't shoot nearly as much as I do. I have full confidence that these strings Bowstrings will take care of the job for her. So the big thing that people like to gripe about is how tight are the servings, and am I going to get peep rotation? Are my strings broken in? Are my strings pre-stretched? Everybody's pre-stretching strings now. 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 300 pounds I've seen advertised. Everybody's pre-stretching out the fibers, and what that is allowing you to do is put the strings right onto the bow, put in your peep, and start shooting. Back in the olden days when we were kind of settling in strings, I still kind of do it as part of my process, but back in those days we had to put our peep and D-loop on, shoot, and then after 50 to 100 shots, something would stretch and our peep would go wank, it would go completely sideways, or even backwards if it was a really crappy string. Today's materials just don't stretch like that, and the way that people, even in the smaller mom and pop stores, can build their strings on a particular string jig and the hydraulic presses, they really can stretch those fibers out well before they end up on your bow. So in my personal opinion, there is nothing wrong with buying a cheap set of string cables. I think in today's world, in today's archery industry, if you have a local shop to you that produces their own string cables, buy them, give them a shot, and if you don't like them, tell them and they'll be able to fix it. There's nothing wrong with buying a cheaper set if it doesn't perform poorly. If it performs poorly, yeah, you're kind of at the creek without a paddle, but at least you know for next time. And it would kind of suck if you bought a high-end, like $100, $120, $130 set of string cables and had it perform poorly. Now you just dished out all that money. Now you maybe have a warranty claim you need to fill out. It's an absolute mess. So I have no problem. I've been a 60X shooter for a very long time. Their string cable sets are right in that upper mid price point, that 70s and 80s of dollars. That's actually a really good price point for string cables. I've never once had a problem with them. I'll put 60X down below, I'll put Cedar Hill down below. If you're interested in Winner's Choice, you can check those out too. There's a whole bunch of different options for you to have as a shooter and as you go into your shop. So I hope this video is informative for you. If you have any questions about string cables or my bows or any of the setup or how I take care of my string cables or how I tune them, please drop a comment down below. Hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and you can always hit my email, which is down below as well, if you want that more personal touch. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time.